Okay then, hi everyone and welcome to the cuEngage session, the Green Credit Union. Today we have Ciaran Byrne, the Head of IT at St Canice's Credit Union, and he's going to lead this session outlining St Canice's Credit Union's goals on becoming a fully green credit union, and he's going to cover things like reviewing all their current processes, the energy the credit union uses, digital tools and the return of investment when going green, and some loan offerings as well. Can I just ask before we start that everyone keep your mic muted just so that we can focus on Ciaran. And if you have any questions, there will be an opportunity at the end, but feel free to just pop them in the chat bar as we go along and we will cover them off. So without further ado, Ciaran, I will let you kick off.
Thank you very much, Emma. Let's see how we go with presenting teams. Bring Barry in. Hello, Barry. Present. I'll just get you to confirm when you can see the presentation deck, Emma, please.
Yes, I can see it now. That's perfect.
Great. Okay. So thanks for the time, everybody, for participating today. I'll start with a brief introduction, if you don't mind, and I'll tell you the number because it's always useful to know these things. I'm not a fan of death by presentation, so there's only 21 slides in this deck, and there's the introduction and the Q&A at the end, so there's really only about 18 or so. Anyway, so we'll kick off, and this talk today is about the Green Credit Union, and it's all about how we manage ourselves, specifically in St Canice's, and we just wanted to share some of our knowledge and learnings on what we found as we started participating and going down the Green Credit Union route. So, without further ado, I'll go to the next slide. And my name is Ciaran Byrne. I'm the Head of IT for St Canice's Credit Union, and we're in August 2022, right? A quick brief description of the agenda, what we're going to talk about, small bit of housekeeping. If you wouldn't mind muting your mobile phones if you're unmuting or whatever. And as Emma mentioned, we'll take questions either in the chat or at the end, or if you really want to talk to me, I've no problem if people want to put their hand up, if you know how to do that in Teams, to kind of interrupt me as I go. I'll be happy to take those as well. I'll talk a little bit about how and why in St Canice's we added green to our strategy, and I'll talk in depth about this little diagram here on my right hand side about the sections of the strategy that are important to us, how we examined and evolved our current processes in terms of how we do business, some of which were in Cion, in our banking system, and some of which are just in the credit union generally. I'll share some statistics because numbers are always very helpful for people to understand, to know how these things make an impact. What digital tools do we use to make that, because some of them are digital, some of them aren't, to be fair, but some of them are, and that's important. What kind of return on investment are we getting, and this is a multi-year path, I guess, we're going down on to bring efficiencies and kind of demonstrate our green credentials. We have a manifesto in St Canice's that we've shared with all of our staff on what we want to do, why we're doing it, and how all those staff members can help. We'll talk a little bit about green loans, and there's a question and answer section at the end. And in order to try and get the best out of the audience, I'm going to keep this talk to about 40 minutes, with lots of room for questions at the end. And there is a spot prize of St Canice's branded goodies that will be given to the best question that somebody might ask throughout the talk. So please feel free to ask your question or put your hand up, but I'm not going to decide which is the best question. It's going to be Emma on the call, and I see somebody has something in the chat already. Yeah, pop the questions in the chat bar. Great. Okay. So without further ado, let's move along. This meeting will be recorded and shared. Ask your questions. If I can't answer a question on the day, or you have something specific that I don't have to hand, I'll follow up with you directly by email afterwards. Please share your details, or Emma, if with no one objections, will share the contact details with me. And I just want to briefly mention who I am. I'm the head of IT, but I'm also a former director of St Canice's and Callan Credit Unions. I've spent about 25 years of my working life in IT specifically, so not necessarily directly in credit unions itself, but I've been a volunteer, and I have the advantage of understanding kind of both sides of the boardroom table, both from an executive level and from a non-executive level, and that's just some of the companies I used to work for in the past. So what we did in St Canice's a couple of years ago was we developed our strategy, and each of these pieces of the pie, should we say, are referencing our strategy, and there's no problem in calling them out. The main focus areas for our strategy were member financial security, because that's very important to make sure we have a strong credit union for our members and keep our members financially secure. we have, and this is the one I'll talk about probably the most, how we work is important in understanding how things go on under the hood and what we want to do. And we have a focus on our talent, which is the staff, which are one of the key focuses of our credit union, is the benefits we get from having great staff. We have a community around us, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment as well. And then we have financial sustainability, which is to make sure that we are a strong credit union going forward and are able to serve our members. So they were the 5 pies of the pillar that we started with. And as we realized that we needed to go green, going green is the topic on top there, we decided that actually there's no extra piece of the pie to be added there, because green applies to all of the pies of the credit union. So we come up with this overarching 6th pillar, effectively, or the curve, excuse me, that's on top, which reflects the fact that we think about green, whatever it might look like, for each of those pieces of the pie. And it comes in many different forms, to be fair. And as I get through the deck, you'll see how each of the areas have a different understanding, shall we say, or how we think about what it actually means to be green. It's important to mention that the primary drivers of this are the senior leadership team in St. Canice's Credit Union, but we made it our business to stand in front of all of our staff, and I effectively gave kind of the contents of this deck as well, to bring them along with us, because they are going to be the people who will help us the most, right? It's a credit union-wide effort. It's not just the management team have said this or decided that. It's for everybody to help us out. So all of our staff understand what the strategy is, and then we refined it by saying, well, if you want to think about green for a specific area or task, then no idea was too small. So we'll come back to those in a moment. And it's important that we agreed as a group to make sure we demonstrate this behavior. So it's one thing to stand up in front of a room full of people like today and say, you know, we did something or we want to do something, but then you have to make sure you come back and reflect on it and actually share the numbers with people. And the numbers I'll share with you today have been shared with the staff, and that's always a useful thing to come back and say, you know, we thought about it, we actually have some demonstrable behavior. Okay, next slide. The first piece of the pie is the member financial security. And that is, when you think about green for member financial security, one of the things we wanted to do was reduce unnecessary spending in the credit union, because one of my abilities as somebody who's had their head in IT for a really long time, I can see opportunities to perhaps automate a process or reduce some inefficiencies. I'm not the best at it by any means, but I can certainly help people understand, you know, there might be a different way to do something, or to help themselves to kind of lift their head up a little bit and go, well, actually, maybe we don't need to do that and we can reduce some unnecessary spending. We also took the opportunity to focus on some green products, specific, and products, it can mean different things to different people. So we have, in partner with Wellington, we have a suite of online services, CU Online and digital onboarding, which is great. It reduces the need, for example, for members to come in with actual bits of paper and put it on a counter, and we need to deal with those. We have a Cultivate product, because a lot of our common bond is agriculture focused. We have spent a lot of time investing in the Cultivate product, which is primarily aimed at those in the agriculture business. We have some mortgage products that we help our members with, and we specifically are involved with the CU Greener Homes product or project, as you want to call it, which is in partnership with Energia, to help members, and we'll come to it again later, provide some energy efficiencies in their own homes through what's effectively a green loan. And we come to green loans at the end. Next question, just checking the chat. No questions so far. Must be doing well. Okay, so this is the important one, right? This is the one I spend a lot of time on, and this is really, as Emma mentioned at the beginning, related to our current and evolving processes. And I stood up again in front of all of our staff and said, look, IT can help with some of these things, right? And it's some simple stuff like we turn off all our computers in our branches at night, right? Because we used to leave them on because they had to be updated and we have to keep them patched, and that's fine. We can do all those things. Oh, there's Anne-Marie in late, right? But with a simple bit of work, we were able to automatically power those for those 16 hours where the branch isn't open, right? We need them on for a couple of hours, and then we just put in the scripting and tooling to turn them off for, you know, 10 of those 16 hours, and we have a saving there in energy costs alone, right? Some things have to be left on. Don't be kidding yourself, like servers and firewalls and whatnot. So we leave those on, right? And we power off the things that we don't actually need to do. So I'm going to digress for one moment, because as part of there's a fun element to this, right? Remember I said it wasn't death by PowerPoint, right? It's prop time, right? And bear with me a moment while I stop presenting and then turn something off, because this is something we want to do, which is stop sharing. Stop presenting for a moment. I'll come back to the deck in a second. So one of the things I just said we do was we turn off some stuff that we don't need. I'm going to admit Ciaran, and I need to turn off that one.
Ciaran, don't worry about admitting people or any of the questions. I'll
Okay.
do that for you.
Thanks, Emma. No problem.
No worries.
So this is my real background, right? As you can see, I'm working from home today. So what we did was we decided we needed an easier way rather than going around and turn off computers. So we used some very simple tools, these are little sellotape holders, right? And we put some red and green tape in them. Okay. And unfortunately, we had to go around to every branch to help ourselves with that, right? And if I go back to the deck, we'll see what that actually meant, right? So we went round and looked in every branch, and you need an ITI, unfortunately, to do this, right? We went back to each of the computers that are plugged in every branch. So what do we need to leave all these things on at night? So remember I said we can turn some computers off and we can turn some computers on. Doesn't necessarily apply to every electronic device that you might have in your credit union. So what we did was, and hopefully you can see the screen, this is something we put in our screensavers. We went round and we just labeled all the plugs using those green and reds, right? And we asked the staff through the screensaver, because it appears on every computer in every branch, if there's a red sticker on the plug, don't turn it off at night, because it's something important. It could be a server or a firewall, like I mentioned. But if it's got a green sticker on it, then just turn it off at night. And that's a very easy way for staff to be involved in, oh yeah, I can see the green sticker on all those. Some of them are not so obvious. Yeah, I might have to crawl under a desk or whatever. But we did go to the bother of doing all that. And it's very simple. It's very cost effective. Those things actually cost us nothing, right? In terms of the costs for the roles. And the savings are a little bit difficult to quantify, because you need like a monthly or a bi-monthly electricity bill to come in to see what your usage is. But it was a very easy way to have our staff members be involved in, we need you to help us with the green. So remember I said the senior leadership team didn't have all the answers. Well, this is one way we came around to try and actually solve it. So yeah, they're my props for that. They cost about €1 in deals or whatever. They're not expensive. So back to how we work, right? I mentioned we turn off the computers. The staff can help too by turning off the computers at nighttime. The other aspects of how we work, and we spent some time with Wellington and investigating these, and thanks to our friends who may or may not be on in Bishopstown and Groan and Broher, and somebody who's already used, for example, digital signature pads, which effectively remove paper from a lot of the equation or the over-the-counter transactions that you might have. You have the members sign these things electronically. It gets saved as a PDF and it gets stored into Scion directly or into the database. And there was no need to print a lot of things. So we're working with those to roll them out across a number of functions in St. Canice's. And the paper saving there is immediate, because you don't need a printer, you don't need thermal paper and so on and whatnot. One of the other projects that we're doing, which I won't dwell on today, but anybody can ask me for details afterwards, is personal lending automation, which is an online end-to-end loan approval process with online applications, online approval, online signatures, which is important too, and effectively reduces the need for all the paperwork to do with that. Please feel free to reach out to me afterwards. My email address is at the end for more information if something you want on that. But all of this stuff comes with a bit of a caveat, because this isn't a panacea. Like you can spend the time and investment in digitalizing a lot of your services or your processes, and you store them on a computer somewhere, and that may or may not be in the cloud. And I'll talk about the cloud for a moment. And it's important to remember, I think, that these are great and it's automated, and to be honest, it's the way forward, but they don't come for free. The cloud computing is a term you'll hear many vendors talk about, or in the cloud or data center, whatever it might be. All it is really is a computer that you can't see and you can't touch. It's just up in a data center somewhere, and we've lots of data centers in Ireland, right? But they have to be powered, and they need energy, and they need cooling, and they need electricity, and so on. So they don't come for free, but they are very efficient. And that's something to be considered when you are, if you in your own credit union are considering moving to a cloud-based service, or you're moving to something like that. The cost is less, because you're invariably sharing that infrastructure with lots of other people and other credit unions and other institutions, because data centers run for many customers, but they're still not free, right? So just remember that. And an interesting a series of talks that's been given on Radio 1 at the moment by Philip Boucher-Hayes is the impact of all this data center stuff generally in Ireland. And they had a very good number recently, which was that cloud services, they were specifically talking about the Facebooks and Instagrams and stuff in this world. It leads to a lot of digital junk. And they had a very good number, which I'd like to share today, which is 54% of data in the cloud is captured, for pictures, snaps, tweets, Facebook posts, whatever you like yourself, right? 54% is captured and stored, but never accessed. And that's an ongoing cost in order to save and store that. So it's not unreasonable to think that in any credit union or financial institution, a lot of data and information is captured and does have to be saved for regulatory reasons. I fully get that, there's no problem, but then don't forget to go and clean it up after the fact, right? So if you keep something for longer than that might be a regulatory requirement, let's say the 7 years for a loan account or whatever it might be, don't forget to go and clean it up afterwards. You have to under GDPR, but that's another overhead of something that kind of gets in the way of our day-to-day business too, right? So be aware that there's a cost to keeping these things for longer than you potentially should. I'm not saying that a credit union would keep 54% of data that's never accessed, but we do keep a lot of data that you need to have, but it costs. So moving to the cloud means you don't have to pay people to move the paper around, but you still have to pay, right? So don't be under any illusion that cloud comes for free, right? That's important to mention. We remind you that it's government policy. Data centers are a thing, and you put this up there, and a company's most sensitive and strategic assets, this is our members' data, right? They're very efficient than your computer in your corner or a comms room, if that's what you have, right? But they're only one step on a digital transformation journey. I appreciate that there are credit unions on this call, large and small, who some are on that journey, some perhaps are not on the journey, some are at the end of the journey, right, and are great. And digital transformation is a topic that gets bandied around a lot, and depending on who you talk to, it's sometimes used for people to sell services that you may or may not need. But it can be something simple like signature pads, like I mentioned already, or it could be seeding a level of control as well, like the loan automation that I mentioned already. There's a school of thought that says, as you move to the cloud and put everything in data centers, perhaps you shouldn't put everything up there. So depending on your appetite for risk of, I can put all my eggs in that one basket, or you might want to keep an actual computer in an actual building somewhere, but they in essence become your backup, whereas your data center services could become your primary level of services. And I've seen some credit unions which are all in on, we'll do everything in the cloud, and it's very clean, it's very efficient, but you might want to keep them in the background, or keep something local, because it's a prudent thing to do. Okay, I've digressed slightly from our strategy and our pillar. So the next piece of the pie, where we said we were going to go green, is in our talent. And for me personally, I've spent a lot of time in other companies where empowerment, or giving the staff the ability to come up with the best ideas, is very much a thing. And I've tried to do that here in St. Canice's as well. I put my hand up in front of the room and said, look, we want to go green, but I don't have all the answers. And that's a very honest thing to say to your staff if you don't have all the answers, because who am I to say I know everything about everything that's going green? So in particular, it's important to remind ourselves that our staff, our frontline staff, our tellers, our supervisors, they know their job best, right? And they see the inefficiencies. So, and they most likely have the best ideas because they're at the front line, right? And they see the waste, right? So helping your staff understand that they have the ability to either ask or put their hand up, share their idea, and do what they can. And from my perspective, my role in helping St. Canice's go green is primarily to unblock others. So help people, as the graphic says, to work a little bit smarter. Not work harder, you don't need to work harder on all this stuff, you just need to work a little bit smarter. So having the staff, and I have a couple of great examples of how we did that in St. Canice's to just work that little bit smarter, because really what it boils down to is the question why. And when you encourage people to ask the question why, that's when the ideas start to flow. And again, the examples I have are very simple things. They're not difficult. They weren't hard to implement. They took a little bit of thinking about, but then when we figured it out, it was like, great, we have something we can move on with. So that for me is going green with our talent, which is helping them to unblock them, sorry, not unblock them, to come up with the ideas, and I can help unblock them. Community is the heart of every credit union, without a shadow of a doubt. And we are here, we as a collective are here to serve our members, because that's our job, right? And going green in a community aspect is, in my opinion, supporting green community initiatives. There is really what we're trying to do is affect kind of the social impact of the credit union, and what are our commitments to help our members. So we would have sponsored, or any credit union, for example, would sponsor many and very different things. What we're trying to do as part of a recent project and feature we put in place, which is our Community Connect Fund, whereby we put €250,000 aside to support community initiatives, and that's a great thing to do, and we've had a lot of applications for that. Not that we kind of particularly prioritize one over another, but we do favorably look upon projects that support a green initiative in some way. I've mentioned one in particular, which is called the Acorn Project, and Roisin Gilroy won't forgive me when I don't give enough detail on this one, but I'll start anyways, which is it's support of a community in Thomastown where effectively there's the River Nore that runs through that part of the country, and we planted just a ton of trees. So we supported that community by just planting trees along the banks of the River Nore, and we involved the local community. There's I appreciate the picture's a little bit small. There was a group of small school children who came along and helped us on that journey, which was great because we got them involved. They, as the future, because the kids are the future of this stuff, are now involved in, oh, that's a nice thing, or a good thing to do. Not a nice thing to do, it's a good thing to do, because part of that project is to explain why planting trees is good. You know, you don't bamboozle them with decarbonisation and all that kind of stuff, but it's good, and they can see the effect. And as those children grow, they'll see those trees grow with them, which is great. And something that we're guilty of in St. Canice's, and I don't know if any other credit union is or not, we need to be standing and shouting this kind of stuff from the rooftops all the livelong day, because it's actually awesome stuff to do. So as I mentioned, we have a fund. At some point we'll get to the allocation phase, and we'll disperse that funds to a whole bunch of projects that are absolutely worthy causes. But from my perspective, and certainly as a leadership team in St. Canice's, we will touch base with those groups on a regular basis and get the feedback from them on how their green initiatives specifically are going, and then we will use everything within our power to A, support them, and B, promote them, which is very much important. So newsletters, AGM, any opportunity you get, if you have a friendly local newspaper editor who will be willing to write an article for you, don't be shy about saying we did this, and that's, I'm not telling anybody what to do, but something that we'll do in St. Canice's, we did something, we supported something, and remind all of our members that this is what we do, because community is very much at the heart of everything we do here in any credit union, right? So the other community aspect is this was going to come eventually, right, is something very simple like recycling. So there's a picture of a waste bin that's just outside my office in St. Canice's in High Street, where I work most days, right? And for those of you astute enough to recognise it, that the coffee cup is actually compostable, right? But it brought home to me that everything in that bin, through no fault of anybody's, I'm not picking anybody, ended up in the black bag or the black bin or the waste bin, right? So we did something very simple, and it'll come in the manifesto. I'll talk about it in a second. We said that is really, it's not that it's inappropriate, but we could do something like that better. So very specifically, what we have is a waste bin at kind of every group of desks or in a specific office. So we said, well, why don't we take them all away and just not give people the opportunity to randomly put stuff in the waste, when you can do something a little bit more efficient and do recycling. Now, depending on the size of your organization, that might not be practical for you, or you may have kind of a very efficient waste management system in place, which is great. I know in St. Canice's, because we have many branches and some TOEs, we kind of inherited services from other vendors or different, perhaps part of in a different county. So we're going to centralize all those and roll this out across all the branches. It'll come in the manifesto in a moment, whereby it's just a simple thing. Same as what anybody, and all of us are great at home. We have a green bin, we have a recycle bin, we segregate the waste. There's no reason why we can't do it in at work as well. And depending on how your staff feel about it, it may or may not be contentious to remove the waste bins or have a central location where you have to bring these things. Somebody's mentioned that the slides have paused. Emma, are you seeing my recycling page?
Yes, I can see
Okay.
it. Yeah.
Great. Okay, Paula, we'll potentially share this deck with you after the fact, if that's okay. Okay, so recycling is a thing, right? And it's a very easy way to demonstrate to your community. I mean, there's no reason why you couldn't put that on your website, going, we've engaged with a waste provider or whatever, and here's the change that we're implementing. Again, these are just ideas. I'm not telling anybody what to do here, just trying to help people out with, here's what we did and here's how it might work for you. So financial sustainability, this is where we get to some actual numbers, and this is specifically the return on investment. When I joined as a staff member in St. Canice, it was in July 2021. One of the interesting things I noted was there was lots of paper, lots and lots and lots of paper. And there are some reasons why you might have to print something that needs to be signed by the member. That's absolutely fine. You may replace those with signature pads in the future, but there was a ton of paper. And when you go looking, you go, oh, well, how much paper actually is it, right? And I have permission to share this number. It's not a secret. In St. Canice's Credit Union, in the previous 12 months, from about May of this year backwards, we purchased 3,125,000 blank A4 pages at a cost of €25,000 per annum. And most of them, I don't have an exact number, but most of them ended up in the recycle bin or being stored somewhere for regulatory reasons, which is fine. And we had a specific problem, and I'll get to the sign adjustments in a second. We had a specific problem, which was we have the facility for members to apply for a loan application online. And the specific problem was, and this was demonstrated, I'll use my hands for this one, this is a good, if you can still see me, right? A staff member pointed out to me, these web loan applications were coming out on a specific printer, and that staff member was taking the printed paper at whatever the cost was per page and putting it straight in the recycle bin because we didn't need it. It was all online anyways, it was stored as a PDF, right? And on a couple of occasions, the staff member said, you know, I have a pain doing this all day long, right? Because it could have been, you know, whatever number was per day, and you were just doing that straight into the recycle bin. So I took that under advisement, and I got in touch with the support team in Wellington, and I said, how do I turn that off? And they didn't have the answer straight away, but in fairness to Rick, he came back to me about the next day and went, oh, that's an easy one. It's this particular configuration line item over here. It's this switch that you need to change. And lo and behold, they stopped printing. And we didn't have to do that. And the person who was happiest about that was the staff member, because they didn't have to do that all day, right? But then when you think about it, we didn't have to print. It didn't cost us toner. It didn't cost electricity to print. We didn't have to put pages in the printer. We didn't have to pay for the network connectivity, which is all the stuff in the background, to make that happen. And that's a very quantifiable thing that you can measure, which was whatever the number of loan applications that were printed in any given day didn't have to come out of the system. So I mentioned that they went to PDF and they ended up in the database somewhere. That would be, depending on your level of automation in your own individual credit union, something you might consider, which is scanning or saving it as PDF rather than actually keeping it on paper. Again, I understand that for regulatory reasons, something might need an actual physical signature from a member, which you might have to keep. But in general, there are lots of things like, you know, bank statements or proof of address or proof of ID, or whatever it might be. Scan it and give it back to the member. I've heard several credit unions tell me that, going, we take it in, we're set up for scanning, we scan it, and we hand it back to the member. Because if you keep it, then you have to store it and destroy it and pay somebody else and whatever. So print it, so scan it, don't photocopy it, because then you're just keeping more paper, right? Print it to a PDF if that's what's needed, right? And if you don't have it on paper, then you don't have to move it around, you don't have to store it and all that kind of stuff, right? Digital signing can help. You know, there are CU Online signature pads. Don't forget there are digital signing opportunities outside of your core banking system. In St. Canice's, we have board minutes that have to be signed by the secretary, and we're trialing, or we will be trialing shortly. DocuSign is an online facility which allows digital signing. We'll try that one, because then it's just a PDF that gets a digital signature, assuming we get regulatory or approval from our compliance team and are at a risk to say that's okay, you can keep those, then we won't be printing those minutes anymore, right? In a previous life, I mentioned I was director of a small credit union here in Callan with 4 staff and 9 directors, and about once a month 100 pages would land in on my doorstep to be read and reviewed and whatever. There are a little bit more efficient ways to deal with that. You may be perhaps using the Microsoft product, which is SharePoint. You can share these things securely with your board members as PDFs or in an online format. That will be useful depending on your setup. You know, you might have computers or iPads or whatever it might be for your directors or non-executive people. That's a very easy way to share documents without having to print them. So, but I appreciate there's a cost involved for using those. So in Cion specifically, one of the adjustments we made was there are two types of statements, Stony A and Stony L. For those of you who know those numbers, we'll be switching from Stony A, which is the old one, to Stony L, simply because we can use a template for the second one, and then we have control of what they look like. We can print them of color if that's what a member wants, and that's a very easy way to make a kind of an efficiency improvement, because then we don't need headed paper. For example, as a little anecdote, a staff member in the area that I sit in, there's about 8 of us. It's not unheard of that a staff member will run up to the printer, stick in a sheet of headed notepaper and put her hands up and say, "Nobody print because I have to print on headed paper." That's a little bit of a challenge sometimes that we need to get over, but it's something that we can do, right, with something like Stony A or Stony L. Other financial sustainability elements you can bring into your credit union are heating efficiencies. You know, not everybody needs to have 22 degrees in their office or workspace all the time. Make it 21 or 20. That's 10% off your electricity or your heating bill, just like that, right? Turn it off at night if that's what you need, right? Remember, heat and light are the kind of the biggest consumers of these things. Why you might do a building energy audit. Again, these things don't come for free, but sometimes you have to have a little bit of pain in order to make the gain, right? If you don't measure what you're spending in terms of energy, then how are you supposed to reduce it? And there's some credit unions are new, or they might have new buildings, and some credit unions are a little bit older. I don't know, and I'm not asking for anybody to tell me. Does every person here who works in a credit union know what the BER rating is of their building that they work in? Is it a G or is it an A? Are you super energy efficient, or probably more likely slightly further down the scale? If you get that number, if you get that grade and you know what it is, well, then you can make efforts to improve it in some way. You could switch to an alternative energy provider. For example, I'm not saying anything about, there's no promotion here. Certain providers such as SSE Electricity only provide green source electricity. It's all wind farms off the coast, right? Whereas the ESB are tied to Money Point, a coal burning power station. You could choose to do that. It doesn't affect you in any given day or day. It's very easy to switch. There are lots of good services that can help you with that. Or perhaps if you're in a multi-branch network where you may have brought in some TOEs, for example, you can kind of combine your bills or get a single bill. Don't be getting 10 bills when you can get one invoice. That's also probability as well. You could switch to alternate energy like solar panels, maybe buy some carbon offsets. Not really a fan of those, but personally, but it may work for you, right? But I guess the point is you can't save or reduce until you actually measure. And I mentioned TOEs. If you happen to be involved in a TOE, that's always a good opportunity to kind of review the two sides of the pie, which are, you know, this is our supplier, that's your supplier. Maybe if we combine or switch, or yours is more efficient than ours, let's use that one instead. That's always a good time to kind of review what you might have. Philip, thank you very much. You have a smart meter, great. I'll come back to that one in a second. That's awesome. We'll talk about that in a minute. And the bonus is, well, I say you, right? And in my slide, really what I mean is the members, because it's all our members' money. We're all not for profit. We don't spend it unnecessarily. So anywhere we can save, we have a bigger opportunity to give back in dividends or rebates or whatever it might be. Conscious of time, I'm at 11:34. I don't want to talk for more than 40 minutes. I'll briefly talk about this one. This is what we said to all the staff in St. Canice's in June 2022. Here's what we want to do, and I need all your help. We want to reduce our energy uses. We want to source alternative providers. We want to do the building energy audits. We want to reduce our paper usage. Remember, I said the number was 3,125,000. We want to reduce that by 85% within 12 months. That's a staggering number, right? If I could do it, I'd be awesome. I'll be a legend for life. But it's a very difficult road to have to travel, because you have to investigate everywhere the paper comes out. Why does it come out? Can we change it? Is there something more efficient? Can we store it as a PDF? Can we scan it? Do we need to keep it? And so on and so forth. That's a job in itself for somebody for 12 months. We also said we want recycling. We want to properly segregate all our waste. We want to support community initiatives, green community initiatives. The Acorn project is one. There's lots more in the pipeline. And we have in St. Canice's, because we have 9 branches, we have 9 communities in our common bond. We want them all to receive support. That's very important, that we don't focus on one particular area or one particular group. We support them all. Carbon emissions are very hard. When I say we, the we that I said in this particular line is it's the senior leadership team. We need help. Everybody needs some help with that one. And you have to measure, because you can't reduce until you know what to set out. Briefly talked in the next slide about some green loans. The World Bank have a definition of what a green loan is. Right, I'm not going to read it out, it's fine. You can read it at your own leisure. The 3 points that the World Bank say is you should understand the use of the proceeds. That's very important for people. What are you going to use it for? How does this fund or help an environmental objective? And I'll get to what you might do in your own credit union based on that. There has to be the management of the proceeds. You have to be a little bit transparent about what you use it for. You say it's for a green initiative, well then let's show me, and we can perhaps, you know, repeat that with somebody else. And you have to report back on how that actually went, because in the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, which effectively give out green loans because they will give you a grant, they insist on things like an updated birth cert, or prove that you've made the saving or you've had some environmental impact, and that's what would be useful perhaps for a credit union. There's only 2 slides left, so it's great. So the green loans, where a credit union might serve their members by servicing green loans, are perhaps in the home retrofit space, right, and electric vehicle. And it's not uncommon, right, that in credit unions, home improvement and car loans are the 2 biggest loan types, right? That's a good thing. You perhaps might change the message on how you're supporting your members, and a quick scan of the kind of website landscape for credit union indicates that some of you do already, which is great. Supporting home retrofits for St. Canice's, it's CU Greener Homes. That's a fully managed grant process in association with a loan, where in conjunction with Energia, whereby we will help our members make their homes better and cozier and warmer, and support them with the loan for that. That's a good thing to do. The government has said 1 million electric vehicles by 2030. That's only 8 years away, right? Actually, the number is actually 936,000, but we'll say 1 million because it's a nice rounder number. According to the SEAI, that's the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland, who support electric cars with grants, at the end of May 2022, there were over 41,000 electric vehicles on the road in Ireland. That's 20%, just over 20%, 20.85% of the new car market so far this year. We, as a credit union movement, we all have a car loan offering. There's no reason why you couldn't promote an electric car loan offering, or some of the supporting services, right? All those cars, they need some chargers, right, that they plug into in the wall. As it stands, until I think the beginning of this month, you needed to have an electric car in order to get the car charger grant funded by the SAI. They've removed that restriction now. It costs about €1,000, but they'll give you back a grant of €600. So we could help our members by supporting them with a electric car grant loan, for example, right? It's under the car loan space, and that might be useful depending on your locality, right? Because smaller, perhaps more rural credit unions might not be served better by electric cars, or the common bond might be different to those who are perhaps city based, or who have a kind of more car usage, for example. So depending on your location, supporting electric cars to a greater or lesser extent may or may not work for you. It's important to remember when people, I don't have the number, I didn't find it, what the cost to run is of these electric cars. In an average diesel powered car, it's about €120, depending on the efficiency, to run your car for 1,000 kilometers. For a electric car, I think it's less than 20. I don't have an exact number. I'll find it afterwards. I'll share it with the group afterwards. That's a significant difference. So a lot of people are put off by the rather large upfront cost. You know, these cars aren't cheap. Who are we kidding, right? But the savings over time is awesome, right? Because you're just feeding it with electricity. And maybe some of the messaging on how we promote our car loans could potentially change around that. You could also do solar panels. Who in the room know that as of February this year, if a person has solar panels, part of a home retrofit, for example, on their roof, if they produce any excess electricity, they get paid back by the electricity supplier. How cool is that? It hasn't actually in place yet, but as part of the Green Climate Action Plan supported by the government, FIT is short for feed-in tariff. When you have solar panels and you produce excess microgeneration, it's called, the government will give you money back. So that perhaps is also an opportunity for credit unions to kind of broaden the scope ever so slightly and not just have a straight home improvement. You could perhaps mention these other things. Air to water and heat pumps is also relevant as well. Now, we're at the last slide, which is great. So some of the current offerings from our competitors, because these are our competitors in the same space. OnPost have a green hub. They mainly focus on home retrofits and EV car purchase. They to me are the biggest because they're in every town pretty much in Ireland as well and offer these services which directly compete with credit unions on a personal level, because a lot of people like are of a particular nature like going in and talking to people in OnPost. AIB, who rolled back recently from the we're going cashless in all our branches, they do home retrofits, renewable energy systems, heat pumps, solar panels, EV car purchases. Definitely up there as one of the bigger institutions to support all these type of green loan initiatives. Bank of Ireland only do home retrofit. Credit unions through CU Green Homes do home retrofit, but there's I don't have a gap there at the end of there's probably more we can do, and my sincere apologies if I'm not picking out a specific credit union or somebody who might be on the call going, we do that, that's great, please tell me and I'll add you to the list. That's an opportunity, for example, for a credit union to grow your loan book, because that's what we want to do with these perhaps green focused initiatives. So that's a lot of talking for one guy, right? On 11:42, excellent, I'm 2 minutes over. That's my last slide. Thank you very much for taking the time. I just want one more, please, if you don't mind, Emma. What did we do, right? Let's remind ourselves, here's what we did in St. Canice's, the easy stuff for the big win, right? And I'm going to, maybe if I can do it quickly, turn off my background again, right? Because this is an easy one. Green and red tape, right? A couple of euro in deals, right? And next thing, we're turning off all these computers at nighttime. That was very easy, very simple thing to do, not difficult, and very in front of staff going, just flick the switch there, right? We looked at our energy consumption, right? That with the green and red, right? But we also looked at our electricity bills. We turned off the printing of the web loans. That's a nice one to do as well. And the that's an immediate thing, right? People see these things not coming out anymore. And there's cost savings. That has an immediate impact on the member savings, right? We don't have to spend the money unnecessarily. We increased our recycling as well, which is another great thing to do, because I have a bit of a green streak for that one, right? And that's another efficiency that doesn't save any money. You still have to pay for the bins to be taken away, but in all good conscience, I know we're doing the right thing, and that's good enough for me on that one. So I'll stop now and say thanks for taking the time, and I'll hand over to Emma to shout out all the questions that came in the chat. I'll stop presenting.
Perfect. That's great. Ciaran, thanks so much for that. I love that there was those sort of small changes that you made. The tape is still my favorite, but even the digital signature pads, even looking at your energy bills, all those simple things you can do are great. I think we did have some questions in the chat, and feel free to type more in if you do. But the first question we have there is from Lisa, and she's saying, were the digital signature pads expensive to install, and have you installed them at all counters?
They're now don't quote me on the number, or I'll keep me honest on this one. They're about €600 each, right? They're not cheap, but we looked at two aspects of the counter, what you're describing there, which is for tellers, and I've seen this specifically in Grosvenor and Bishopstown, which are full users of it, where every document that would go over the counter to a member to sign is at the teller point. In St. Canice's, we have a lot of tellers in a lot of branches. So at the moment, what we're focusing on is just putting them in our loans counters. We have a dedicated loans area in our high street branch and in each of our smaller branches. It's just an office whereby the bigger pieces of paper, like the 10 or 12 page loan applications, credit agreements, which we're going to put them through the digital signature pads because they're heftier documents. And then after that, we'll reevaluate and come back with things like withdrawal slips and lodging slips and things like that.
Great, thanks for that, Lisa. I can get Kevin to reach out to you as well if you like. Yeah, the next one was from Philip. He was just saying about they've implemented, just for anyone that missed it, they've implemented a smart meter and it's working great at the moment. Unneeded screens, heating is linked to security alarms. So once the branch is closed, they're turned off completely, which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Another question from Lisa here. When a member gets or inquires about an e-car loan with us, we are upselling our solar panel loans, offset costs for charging car, both lower rate loans. Sorry, that's not a question. That's more for the group.
That's great, Lisa. Yeah,
that is great. Yeah.
Do you get many inquiries for those, Lisa? Would you mind sharing a number if you had it to hand?
That's great though. It's great to have, like, other credit unions, obviously sharing what you're doing and collaborating on that. It's such a unique industry in that way that you're able to collaborate and help each other.
I agree. And maybe to add what you said there, Emma, like unique industry at the moment, but it's becoming more prevalent because it's government strategy, right? It's solar panels on houses, it's electric cars, it's all this kind of energy saving, air to water or heat pumps or whatever it might be. So definitely becoming more into the norm. Like 20% is the just over 20% of new vehicles to May this year are electric car or electric or plug-in. Let's be, you know, they still have an engine in them, right? But they're on the right track, right?
Perfect. And then there's my lovely colleague Claire, who many of you familiar with. Just clarifying, the digital signature pads is about 480 plus PS time.
Thank you, Claire.
And that's great, Ciaran, just to have your email in there as well. And we don't have any other questions at the moment, unless anybody wants to unmute your mic. Feel free to. Oh, I'm lying. We have one from Nikki. Thanks, Nikki. Hi, Ciaran. Were your member emails supporting documents for loan? Were your members' email supporting documents for loan? Can Canice save as a PDF and upload directly to members' account on Cion?
Yes, it's a little bit convoluted. So, thank you, Nikki. That's a great question. We can do for sure. I'll share it briefly, and if anybody wants more information, please email me afterwards. I'll be happy to demonstrate this one to you. We use a shared server where the G Drive, right? For those of you who are familiar with the G Drive, we have reconfigured with the help of Rick in Wellington a new process whereby if it's emailed in or scanned in at the counter, right, as a PDF, if we put those files with the member's number, account number, in a specific location, they get automatically uploaded to the account in Cion. Yep. I could tell that might be news to some people, right? My colleague Barry is on the call himself, and Rick worked with that one, so I'm happy to promote Barry as you know, it's €10,000 a day, right? No problem. I'll put him on site with you, and he'll configure this in your system, right? But that's what we did. It took a little bit of organization. It's a little bit technical, right? But thanks to Rick, who's not on the call, who worked through it with us, which is it's a very easy way for tellers and staff to go, I know I put something in this particular location and it gets uploaded automatically. So I'll talk to you afterwards, Nikki. That's awesome. No problem.
Yeah, and Nikki, it's Claire here. We might look at doing an API there to simplify it, just something put in place. So Rick and myself will look at that over the next few weeks when he's back from holidays. So I'll touch base with you and let you know as well what's happening with that.
Another question here, actually just a comment from Therese, which I think would all echo, send. It's very informative, lots of good ideas to take on board, so thank you. There is a question here from Marie. Hi, Ciaran, have you ever considered having your carbon footprint calculated? Yes, we have, Marie, and that would come effectively as part of a building energy audit. Again, until you measure, you can't know what you have. I don't know what the number is, or you know, it's probably kilograms per ton in terms of output, right, is how we would do that. And when we would know what that number is, based on kind of the point in time audit, we would take away any recommendations to improve heating, lighting, printing, whatever, right, and energy consumption reduction generally. But then you have to come back and do those audits again to know what the new number is, and then you can say, we made these improvements, and this is our new number. So carbon footprint calculation, Marie, is a single point in time. It just tells you what you're using today. You have to go back and do it again later to know what any savings might be after you implement any changes or improve some processes in your own particular credit union or billing or whatever it might be. Great. Oh, correction from Barry. It's €20,000. Just okay. So thank you, Barry. Yeah, so Lisa has asked, I believe this is in relation to Nikki's question before, can you specify what that document is stored under, i.e. loan document identification? Not at the moment, Marie. That's a sorry, Lisa. It's underway because we have the ability to get them all in there, right? And sometimes, depending on the member, you can have a lot of documents that you have to scroll through to find them. We're working with Rick and the Wellington team to make that change. We know about that one, and I suspect the API work that for those of you who don't know, API is application program interface. It's how computers talk to each other. Work that Rick is going to do will bring that in, where you have the ability to specify what loan or what document type this is, because that's important. Might be it for the questions. Okay. At least it's just saying that would be
Yeah.
great. It would save so
Okay.
much printing. It absolutely
Yeah.
would.
Printing is the problem, right?
Yeah. But yes, Ciaran, that might be us for the questions. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. Spot prize.
Spot prize. We're not done, right? So Emma has to pick the best question,
Yeah.
and then we'll get in touch with the winner, and I'll send you a bag of St. Canice's stuff, right? So pick the winner, Emma.
Well, I think based on participation, it's got to be Lisa.
That's 100. I agree with you 100%. Great.
Perfect.
Congratulations, Lisa. Some St. Canice's branded things are on the way to you sometime soon.
Such pressure on me there, Ciaran. When you're joking, Ciaran, pressure is on you, and thank you so much. You delivered an excellent presentation. We really appreciate your time. We can't do CU Engage without people like you. Really, really interesting presentation. I think from the comments you can see people saying there, really great information, lots to take away. The meeting is recorded. I will share that straight after. The slides are within the recording, but I know some people asked for them separately, Ciaran. So I know you sent me them. If you're happy with that, I'll PDF them and send that as well. And there'll be a short survey also. But that's us. Thank you so much, Ciaran. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all for attending today. It's always very helpful to say these things out loud, right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye-bye.